All right. We didn't get very far through the agenda thing.
I think we're going to get going. So, want to get started?
Let's get started. Yeah. Well, this is kind of an adventure. Thanks for getting me into this.
Yeah.
Just for the record, before anyone goes any further, this was your idea.
No, this was your idea.
No, people know I'm lying. This was my idea.
We actually had to tell you what a computer was before.
Oh, no, easy. But I do want to congratulate all my boomer friends out there who have managed to log on, because without the help of their kids, I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, we'd like to mention, if you're looking for tech support, don't look to us. Call your kids, please. Just want to thank everybody who's signed in to join with us today on Zoom and on Instagram Live. This is kind of the first time we've ever done anything like this.
First time I've ever done anything like this. So
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting.
We'll do a little virtual tasting. This tasting is something that's novel for us, and it's actually pretty exciting because it's a way that we get to connect with everybody out there around the country, even though obviously with our tasting room shut down and with all the closures that we're facing around the country, this is kind of our chance to reach out to you guys and bring, hopefully bring Frog Sleep wine to you and bring our lovely faces to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange around the winery today. Normally we would on a Saturday be packed with visitors enjoying themselves, and it's beautiful here now with the cherries blossoming and the fruit trees all in bloom, and the first buds are out in the Merlot and Chenin Blanc, huh?
Merlot and Chenin Blanc. So we are rolling. Nature is rolling with us or without us. But we wanted to put this tasting together and basically do some day drinking with you all in order to share the wine and hopefully share just some stories about the wines that we've experienced while making them. So I guess that's a good chance to introduce ourselves. Who the heck are these bearded folks on Instagram?
Well, I am John Williams, owner and winemaker of Frog Sleep Winery.
I'm Rory Williams, owner and winemaker of Frog Sleep Winery. So we're going to be competing for props for just exactly how awesome these wines are, and we hope that in all seriousness we're going to be pouring a couple of different Cabernets today that hopefully you guys have been able to source. If you don't have these specific wines, that's okay too. We've got we talk a little bit specifically about these wines and the years that they were made, but also just touch a little bit generally on why do Cabernet Sauvignon and what we love about this wine.
Well, we decided to start with Cabernet because, of course, it's Cabernet, and it is the #1 wine at Frog Sleep, so important to us. And we thought if the show gets canceled, we might as well at least get the Cabernet done first.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Exactly. So the way this...
Can we be canceled?
Yeah, exactly. One episode only.
We'll see what the Nielsen ratings are.
Yeah, exactly. So the way this is going to work, we're going to go through this wine and do stay towards the end, as we are going to have a kind of a special wine at the very end, a third wine. For those of you that are on Zoom, please, if you have questions about the wine, we're going to be taking questions and doing our best to answer them. You can ask. There are no dumb questions. We hope. Please don't ask any dumb questions. But if you have a question about the wine for either he or I, or just in general questions about anything with all of this, please drop it in the Q&A section on Zoom, and that we're monitoring that, and we're going to get some, hopefully get some good questions in here to just interact with you all today, and not have it just be us, describing whether it's boysenberry or blackberry that you should be tasting.
And can they chat amongst themselves? Is that what I understand as well?
There is a chat function on there, and you should be able to make comments about how awesome we are and how much fun you're having with the tasting. Want to acknowledge the Instagram crowd as well. We won't be monitoring question and answer on that, but we hopefully you all can just join and interact with us as well.
And a special shout out. I know a lot of friends and family are listening in. Now stop it. And so a special welcome to everyone there too. This is how we're having to communicate these days to a certain extent. And so if this becomes nothing more than a way for us to communicate with all of our frog fellows and friends in the winery and family, mission accomplished, right? So
exactly. And we hope to be doing this. We're doing this today. We've got plans to do it every Saturday for basically for the foreseeable future. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about what wines we've got planned for those tastings. But for now, let's get started. I'm thirsty. I got
a little dry cough.
No. You know, on that note, I just want to make sure everybody knows that, you know, we're following protocols. We got 6 foot distance between us, as you can see by our completely to scale ruler here. So don't anybody worry. And with that, I think we'll get started with the 2012 Estate Cabernet.
Thank you, sir. You know, 2012 is the first all estate Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's such a special wine for Frog's Leap. It is, you know, look, any of you guys who know me know I've been making Cabernet Sauvignon in the Valley since working with Warren and Andre Chelchef back at Stag's Leap in 1975. And I think so many of you know that our beginnings at Frog's Leap, my beginnings in the wine industry are so humble that the idea that we would own and farm and control enough Cabernet Sauvignon to have an estate grown, which means we grew all these grapes ourselves, wine after all these years is really, really, really special wine. So this is the first all estate labeled Cabernet Sauvignon 2012. I think it's about 85% Cab, 15% Cabernet Franc, which is about a standard ratio for Frog's Leap. And I think somewhat legal in the labeling as well, correct?
Yeah, for the first time ever, I think. Just kidding, TTB, just in case our folks at the TTB are checking in.
So, and this is a special year for you too.
This was, you know, Frog's Leap obviously has been a part of my life since before I was born. The winery started in 1981, and I was born 3 years later. Right into the mix of things. And so we, you know, obviously for my whole life, my siblings, Kyler and Kelly and I have been part of the winery, working summer jobs. And when we were home for spring break, that's what we were doing, working out in the vineyard or working in the cellar, scrubbing bungs or whatever we were doing. 2012, however, was the first vintage that I was back at the winery and actually employed, actually paid for the work that I was doing. So, you know, apparently there are exemptions for family having to pay them. But 2012 was the first vintage that I was back with the company full time.
Working on the vineyard crew.
Working on the vineyard crew. And so that was kind of my entryway back into the business, was working on the vineyard crew in 2012 and getting to participate in the whole swing of harvest, and seeing some of these grapes come up the conveyor and get fermented. In 2012, a lot of the fruit, some of our first fruit from our Rossi estate vineyard. So this was a very significant year for us.
And it really was the acquisition of the Rossi vineyard in 2007, and then the rebuilding of that with all of Frank's work that got us to the point of having an estate grown Cabernet. So very special. Now we know that maybe some of you don't have the 2012. But just open any old thing will come along with us. This is not a technical thing. We're going to talk mostly about Cabernet Sauvignon in general. And, you know, Cabernet is king, right? It's the wine that is so special in the Napa. But what makes Cabernet so special? Why is Napa Valley such a special place for Cabernet Sauvignon from a viticultural point of view? Well,
you have the ideal combinations of soil, sun, water, and I think you've got a certain dedication to the craft here, and you get that.
Damn, that's good.
Actually, yeah, we should probably take a second.
Yeah,
take a drink of this wine. So we'll pause. Everybody take a good sip of this.
And for the person who wrote in and asked which of us is the younger, thank you. I will send you a couple extra bottles of wine. I think it was Bill and Jeannie Quain sent that in.
Yeah. So thanks very much for that. What makes Cabernet special in Napa? It's you know, Napa is planted to Cabernet quite widely, especially nowadays. Cab is king, as you said. It's in Napa, you get that, you get that combination of getting all of the sunshine, all of the beautiful dense fruit that we love out of Cabernet Sauvignon that you get when it's grown right, and when it's made with the kind of honesty that we try to approach our wines with. You get a chance to create this kind of incredibly complex and reflective wine, a wine that reflects what we call terroir. Has that ability, you know, for me, my understanding of terroir is not so much the based off of tasting notes and based off of you know, being able to put a descriptor to a particular flavor in the wine. Instead, for me, the term terroir really means that this wine tastes like home to me. I grew up around Cabernet Sauvignon. Wine has been a part of the fabric of my life since the very beginning. I don't remember my first glass of wine. It came that early. And so when I taste things, especially and we encourage everybody to be able to try and find older bottles like the 2012 that really get a chance to show what they got, because Cabernet is the kind of wine that just continues to develop and continues to develop over time. In 2012, you know, you might ask, you know, why is it important that it's estate grown? Can't you just buy great Cabernet from out there? And I think that really reflects, you know, that kind of that really gets to the core of why we do what we do and why we farm the way that we farm. And that's kind of the critical piece that we have with estate grown fruit, is that means that we're out there doing it. We see these grapes through from the very beginning. We plant the grapes, we train them up the stake, and over the years we prune them, we form them, and we farm them the way that we want to farm them, which maybe not everybody knows is 100% organically and 100% without irrigation. And that's not common in Napa County. It's pretty easy to go out there and get a number to say, well, you know, the average price of Napa Cab out there is X dollars. The average price of Napa Cab that the way that we like to farm it is
you're not giving me a chance for me to talk.
Is not applicable, because we farm the way that we love to farm these grapes. And we feel like that gives us the best chance to reflect on, you know, the famous Rutherford dust, that kind of distinctive character of Rutherford Cabernets, which for me, you know, like I was saying, is less of a saying, well, pointing at, you know, this part of the glass, well, there's the Rutherford dust. That's usually just you need to clean your glass out a little bit better. But instead, that Rutherford dust is that sense of grounding, that sense of home, that kind of sense of familiarity that you get when you have a wine that really, really speaks to a place. It doesn't taste like Cabernet from elsewhere in Napa. It doesn't taste like Cabernet from elsewhere in the world. It tastes like Rutherford Cabernet. And I think that's the dust is the romantic term applied to that kind of sense of terroir.
I think this, if you don't speak French, terroir is basically the word for the personality of the wine, the combination of its DNA. This is Cabernet Sauvignon, born of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. That's very fundamental to its being this wine, but also the minerals in the soil, the air that it breathes, the microflora of the soil. Everything around this grape growing up has contributed to this personality of the wine. And the best wines in the world are those that have such a strong personality of the place that they were grown. No wine could be replicated anywhere else in the world that would smell like that. And I think that is really at the highest level what's enjoyable about wine, is this idea that a wine would have such a personality of place, the kind that once you get to know that, you recognize it every time you smell it, and it's like a trip back in space. I think a little bit more about the farming, because, you know, not all soils are appropriate for Cabernet Sauvignon. I mean, we were in Bordeaux earlier this year, and literally a few feet away from a very famous vineyard would be another vineyard that wasn't quite so famous. You know, the soil is really critical of making Cabernet, and why maybe Cabernet shouldn't be planted everywhere in the Napa Valley.
You know, that gets down to just being able to having total control of your farming really enables you. And this is something I've learned from our vineyard crew and from our vineyard team as I've really grown up in the company and been a part of the full-time team here, is, we talk about the differences between a yard here and a yard there, a vine that's 2 feet that way. You can get differences in Napa. Napa is a kaleidoscope of soils that just is endlessly fascinating for those who are totally geeked out about wine to explore, and that kind of variation is what makes it special. It's what champions the kind of distinctive winemaking that we like to. It imbues the wine with the most amount of personality possible. And we actually, Eric Hill had a great question on Zoom about what made 2012 special in that regard. And I think it kind of touches on the notion of personality, which is that 2012 was it was a big year production wise. It was a very kind of happy and moderate year, and the wines have.
It was the first year of the drought too, wasn't it?
It came just the year after.
Okay.
So 2012 was this very sort of generous, moderate year that led to, in my opinion, very friendly and very kind of not necessarily soft-spoken wines, but wines that are just extremely generous. In the 2012s, I remember as soon as it went into bottle was extremely generous right away. And different vintages can have different personalities. Sometimes they're very stern and serious when they first get bottled, and they take time to unravel. Whereas the 2012 and for that matter the 2014 are just they were ready to party right away. And that's what
does that mean they're not going to live as long?
I don't think so. I think that this wine is destined for a long life because it still has a lot of stuffing to it. It's not, it's not to say that the wine, because it opened up a little bit earlier than some other wines, is destined for a shorter life. It's just that it left the property with sort of some rounder edges around it. And that'll change its personality over time. And I think that's how I've always understood our wines and wines, especially older wines in general, is it's not so much about them getting better over time, but instead they just get different. And that personality kind of shifts and matures with time. And it's fun coming back to the same. We highly encourage you to buy multiple bottles of Frog's Leap wine so that you can continue to come back to, just so, for no other reason, so that you can come back and enjoy the personality of that wine over time and see how it develops.
We're getting a couple questions coming up on Zoom, and one of them I see is, when do we recommend we drink this wine? And I think, honestly, it's a question we get asked all the time. Is how long should I age this bottle of wine? And, a standard rule of thumb for me is 10 years is really the minimum to allow the real depth of flavors. But these wines are so enjoyable when they're young as well. I mean, I think wines are like people. You change over a long period of time, but I'm fond of saying that if you're ugly when you're young, you're going to be ugly when you're old. I mean, they have to have balance and have their stuff together even when they're young, or they're not going to be that way older. But these wines last forever. As you know, we frequently open bottles from our earliest vintages in the 80s, and they're just still developing and spectacular. This wine is just starting its path now, I think. Yeah. But I love them with about 10 years of age because they just really start. This is showing Rutherford terroir really, really beautifully. Yeah,
and I think if I had to put a name to that flavor that develops over time in older Cab, and really what's your reward for holding on to Cabernet for a few years, is that it develops this kind of balance of this floral and dried herbs, the cedar, the graphite, the kind of classic Cabernet descriptions that emerges with time, and it only emerges in wines that are made with the proper care. I think this 12 is just starting to really flash some of those aromas. It's really getting some of those tertiary aromas. We had a quick question from Christina. Sorry. How old are your estate vines? On average, our estate vines are about 16 years old, and that varies pretty widely depending on the exact vineyard and the exact block. We have some Cabernet that's just coming up the stake this year in a couple of new blocks that we've planted. Our oldest Cabernet vines are close to 35 years old in some of our oldest blocks, and those make some of the wines that we often bottle as little as fellowship or wine club only wines. But that's
I think it's one of the most exciting things about Frog's Leap now is every year these vines are just a year older.
They just get a little bit older.
And I think it addresses some of the early decisions, and a question came in about why we decided to farm organically, why we dry farm, why we plant all these other crops and have all this biodiversity in our farming system. And that's critical to this idea of establishing balance and restraint. So these are all farming techniques to bring out the real character of these vines. And as we go along, we'll talk more about organic farming and farming without irrigation, which we consider to be fundamental and are very, very much a part of this wine. So,
but I think it's worth just quickly talking, Dad, about, kind of what, what got you started in organics? Because you're a bit of an OG when it comes to organics in Napa Valley.
Well, I was thinking about that. We held a meeting of 8 growers in 1988, the people who were growing grapes for me, to learn about organic farming. And as far as I know, it was the first organized meeting of growers to talk about organic in the entire Napa Valley. And I think our eyes were open to the possibility of what it meant. And we had so many preconceived ideas about what it was. And there was really an opening. And of course, Amigo Bob had a big part of this, because we thought organic farming, it was kind of, we have to remember the time. This was organic farming was the provenance of back to the landers and hippies and so on and so forth.
People like to smoke the cover crop,
Well, maybe. But to hear this description of organic farming, of bringing the soil alive, and that healthy living soil produces a healthy living plant, and a healthy living plant naturally resists disease, and that organic farming wasn't so much about not using chemicals, it was about building fundamental health from the soil up so that you didn't have to use chemicals. It was really exciting news, particularly for me, who had grown up in that kind of paradigm of better life through chemistry, green revolution. Remember, this is Cornell Davis teaching, all you had to do was add more minerals, more fertilizer, more to the soil, and you were going to get bigger crops. And we were starting to find that was breaking down, and it's been an exciting. This year we've been certified organic 31 years at Frog's Leap. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. So, how are we doing? Should we move on to the next wine here?
Well, I just want to make sure that we got to rate this wine. I think we got to give this wine some points, don't you think?
Yeah, we do. What are you going to rate this wine?
Wow, I got it. I just got it right away here. This one.
It's amazing, because I rated this wine too.
100 points.
And so we both agree this is a 100-point Cabernet.
Congratulations,
Sauvignon.
you are drinking a 100-point Cabernet right now. Please don't ask anybody, any critic, whether what rating they give it. But we're very happy with it. Let's see. Do we want to quickly move on? Well, we can.
Keep the questions coming.
We can move on to the 17 in a second, but maybe we got a couple of other questions we want to answer here. David Shapiro, I have 2008 cab. How long should we keep it? 2008 is a great year, a very concentrated year. That was a frost year. What that means is that it got right about this time of year. I've spent the last couple nights awake checking frost fans, and so is Frank Leeds, a longtime vineyard manager and VP of vineyards. And I think 08 was one of the worst frost years we've ever had. It was a big battle to keep keep the vines healthy that year. It led to some pretty concentrated wine that year. It was a fairly low production year, but with great intensity. I think a lot of black fruit that year. It was kind of
It was a gorgeous vintage. I recently had a bottle, and it is just getting started. Remember that 10-year rule. That what we really suggest is that at 10 years is when you start drinking them. And that wine, I hope you have a case of it, because really these wines over the next 20, 30, we drink Napa cabs that are 40 and 50 years old. And I think it's really the thing that California, and particularly Napa Valley cabs, offer that, I'm a big Bordeaux lover. They have a lifespan that is really, really incredible. And 40 years is nothing for these wines if they're made in this kind of restrained and balanced style.
Yeah. So to directly answer the question, open up that 08 tonight. To be quite honest, no time like the present, where there was another question about kind of what wine is best to pair with the 2012 or with some of our older Cabernets. And especially as the wines get a little bit older, once they get to hit that 10+ year mark, there's often this kind of association with big steak and Cabernet, and that works pretty well a lot of the time, especially I think with younger Cabernets that have a little bit more tannin. As they get older, they get a little bit more subtle. Their personality matures, and I prefer simple meal and just focus. Not necessarily to focus on the wine, and you got to be all about what's this wine taste like, and maybe just take some of the pressure off of having to have the wine pair perfectly. Cook a roast chicken, roast some vegetables,
some squab or something like that. Something like that. With a little more flavor in it. Yeah, the older wines do better with the more subtle and more.
With some of the classics, you're drinking a classic Napa Cab. I'd say prepare a classic meal and just enjoy the food, enjoy the wine, and especially enjoy the people that you're sharing the wine with. That's going to make any wine taste better, including our own.
We had a great question come in about decanting. Thanks, Darren and Peggy. My theory of decanting is most people look to the decanting as younger wines, trying to open up younger wines. I don't buy into that theory. Younger wines, I like to keep pouring them out of the bottle. To me, decanting is for older wines for two purposes. One, separating any potential sediment, and I don't see a lot developing in this bottle yet, but it's very unusual to open an older bottle of our wine and not find sediment in it. But it's really more that this wine is like a genie that's been in the bottle. And I often open older wines and go, oh boy, I don't know if this is going to be good. Is it slightly corked and so on? And it's because that wine has been literally in that bottle, cooped up for all this period of time. And it takes a while for it to unfold. And I think that's the main reason to decant wines that are 15, 20 years old. That's where I think decanting really comes in valuable. Yeah, I don't know what your experience is.
Honestly, with decanting, and I agree, unless you have some wine that you're just dying to drink way too young, and it needs a lot of air to give you any kind of pleasure out of that wine, you'd be better off keeping that wine for a few years. And with a wine that is a little bit older, again, you'd want to decant to separate that sediment out, but I almost prefer to just get a big glass and just pour the wine in there and start swirling. And it's, drink that wine over the course of an evening. Try not to chug it, you know who you are.
Or get a Magnum.
Yeah, or get a Magnum, perfect, yeah.
I'm not fond of Magnums because they're a little too much for one person, but not enough for two.
I know, you always just run out whenever you're drinking with another person. But when you get that wine into the glass, you're essentially doing a little mini decanting in your glass. And if you swirl that, you're opening that wine up over time, because wine changes. Decanting shouldn't be viewed as this, you get the wine in the decanter, you're kind of waiting for it to be at its perfect, and then drink it all down. Instead, get in your glass, kick your feet up, and just enjoy that wine and how it develops over time, because that wine is going to develop in your glass over the course of an evening. It's going to develop, what's left in the bottle is going to develop over the course of the evening, and you're going to notice different things about that wine when it first goes into the glass, and when you're finishing off the last little bits of it at the bottom of your glass at the end of the evening. Wow. And that, for me, is really what is enjoyable about sharing wine and sharing, especially older wines that have a lot to offer. Edward Schlikas.
I think we're down the hatch. We got to move on.
We'll move on. How many years ideal to lay down your Cabernets? We talked about the 10-year rule, but really any time between 5, and we had the 87 Cab the other night.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Like we said, it's a
30, 40
you'd
years.
Really be better off buying an entire case of the wine and just examining it yourself over time.
I know that sounds self-serving, but these are the wines you really want to have some stuck in your cellar that you forget, because they just get so lovely. Yeah. And the Rutherford character is really coming out in this wine.
Rutherford character, and and really with the 12 was the advent of the Rossi fruit, which for me is this kind of a very aromatic component of the wine, together with our the Chavez Leeds vineyard is another very aromatic vineyard, and you get these kind of complex aromatics. 2012 was one of the first years where we were able to really maximize that, and it got just so exciting. So I think maybe we'll move on to now that we've rated the wine and everything,
Yeah.
let everybody know what we think about this wine.
Let's show the rating on that one more
Just
time.
so everybody realizes,
Yeah.
100 points.
Not all of you have had a chance to try a 100-point wine before, so yeah.
So we're going to move from 2012, which
Now,
was
notice the label difference here
a little
slightly.
bit of a label difference. For those of you who have not seen the label difference, we made a few tweaks to the label, starting with the 2017 cab that hopefully you all will be able to see fairly soon, wherever you are. Maybe you've got it in front of you right now. Some subtle changes, but we're pretty happy with them. Moving between the 2012 and the 2017 is pretty interesting. 2012, we talked about it being this, easy, generous, very productive year, especially coming on the heels of 2011, which was a pretty cold and a little bit, kind of a challenging year. Wines that were
Oh my God,
difficult to a little bit difficult to deal with. 2012 was very easy. Well, I am the winemaker.
Wait, I'm the winemaker.
We must both be geniuses.
Yeah,
That's amazing. Glad we're confirming this live for everybody.
Hey, I will say this, and you stand down for a second because I want to give you a lot of credit on this wine. This was probably the most, I've been making wine for a long time, and this is one of the craziest vintages I've ever seen in my life. And we had a question earlier come in about what are the effects of the fire. Well, this is the year 2017 that we had the significant fires in the Napa Valley, really right as we were well into Cabernet Sauvignon. It really didn't affect other varieties that year, but Cabernet. And so this wine is a triumph of over many elements that conspired against us in 17. And it just put such a smile on my face to try it and smell it and find it so gorgeous and so expressive of terroir and so beautiful. This is a beautiful wine. Yeah.
We joke around a lot with each other about making wine and growing grapes, and hey, thank goodness I gave you all these good grapes this year.
Yeah.
Well, thank God I rescued your wine this year. 2017, as I was getting out of it, 2012 was easy. 2017 was a challenge-filled year, and from the very beginning. And we talk about the fires. The fires were the coup de grace of 2017. But it started with.
I didn't know you knew French.
Bien sûr.
Oh,
yeah. We're very fancy here, actually. Yeah. 17 started with some of the heaviest rainfall we've ever gotten in Napa County, about almost three times of our average rainfall. It kind of just never stopped. That came into the year where we had lots of growth, lots of moisture in the year. It makes things very difficult about this. If it were raining cats and dogs outside right now, it makes my job in the vineyard a little bit harder to get ready for the rest of the year because the vines just keep going. And just as soon as we thought we kind of found our feet under us, when the summer got going and the growing season started, we just got a big series of heat waves in May, in June, in July, and then the kind of one of the three of the craziest days I've ever seen in Napa County, which was Labor Day weekend in 2017 with 3 days above 110 degrees before we had picked any Cabernet at that point. And that leads to certain challenges with the grapes, but it was extremely, part of the reason that we're tasting, we don't want to go on about, it's really crappy wine, or crappy beer. The reason that this wine is so satisfying for us to share with you and so satisfying to drink is this, it was a testament for us in 2017 at just how resilient our vines were. And we talk about, the importance of growing organically, of dry farming especially, and the kind of, the fact that we're in this, our skin is in the game with Frog Sleep. We're in this for the long haul as this family winery, and we plant grapes to last for a long time. And we design everything we do around our farming to sustain a vineyard for decades at a time. We're not looking at this as, hey, I got this acre here, man. I gotta get 10 tons out of this acre. It's gotta happen. I gotta hit my margins. Our approach with all of our grapes for a long time, and this has been our philosophy for a very, very long time, is to build resilience, build soil health, build healthy vines that give us wines that speak to terroir, that speak of balance. And 2017 is the payoff for that kind of commitment to that farming. And it really shows the advantage of estate grown fruit, where despite all of these crazy heat waves and despite all of the heavy rainfall, and when it came down to it, despite running into fires at the end of the year, we were able to generate fruit that just astounded us. It was almost miraculous seeing this fruit come in, because the heat was no doubt frazzling our brains, but it didn't really seem to faze the vines. They were able to kind of cruise right through it. They had some wonky numbers for a little bit, but they were able to adjust themselves, find their balance, draw up extra nutrients as they needed from the soil. And that, spoke to the connection that those vines have with where they're grown here in Rutherford. And that resilience, that ability to bounce back from adversity is, that's the idea anyway. It worked in theory for a long time, and 2017 was the proof positive.
I think as you described the 17 and all that we went through it reminds me of the current times and about where we need resiliency now amongst ourselves and our families. And it is the core values in wine, the core values of farming and so on. In business, it's the core values of your employees and taking care of the environment and so on and so forth. And so the same sort of values that allowed this wine to be so expressive, not only of Cabernet Sauvignon, but of this vintage. You will never taste this vintage, and you'll be drinking this wine for many, many, many years to come. You'll never taste this vintage without thinking about that resiliency. And I think if we all make it through what we're all going through right now, we'll never have a moment in our lives when we don't think about what we had to call on ourselves. In a way, I think this is why I like to collect and drink older wines, is because they almost become liquid time capsules of that time, and they remind you of the issues of that vintage and things that were going on in your own life and so on. And this will be a favorite of wine of yours for many, many years. Rory and Paula and Pablo in particular, and Jairo really stepped up this vintage as well. Jesus, we separated lots by the hour almost, because we were concerned that the smoke that was in the air as we pulled in the last of the grapes could influence the vines. We didn't have a lot of information about that. And so there were millions of trials going on, millions of separations of barrels, and not millions, but several thousands, hundreds of thousands, dozens, yeah. And you pulled it together, and we lost some wine. About 15-20% of our wine was declassified, and
we did ship out a significant portion of this wine, not necessarily because, and actually we never did taste any grapes having any kind of direct effect from the smoke, but with all of the kind of craziness at the end of the year, we ended up pulling in some fruit pretty early, just to kind of get it safe into the winery. And some of those lots didn't quite make the cut. But what was left is, I think, a testament to, like we said, the resilience of those grapes, but also the resilience of the people behind it. It's hard for me to talk about this, but we had about 4 days of picking left to us when the fires hit in 2017, and we were fortunate enough to have a couple days of actually clear skies in Rutherford. We felt like we were a little bit of an island in the center of the valley, so we weren't necessarily picking in smoke, but we were picking in an air of uncertainty and an air of fear, in a way of what was happening and what was happening to loved ones and friends and neighbors. And it was incredibly striking to me that the team showed up, that the vineyard team was there, hauling in, making a heroic effort to bring in the fruit. The cellar team was there working without power, at first without power in the winery, to bring in the fruit safely. And that's the work, and it's not guaranteed. And we were incredibly grateful. And the wine that is hopefully in your glass in front of you is a testament to that kind of strength.
You mind if I read what a famous wine critic said about this wine?
Sure.
Yeah. So this says, The 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon is such a gorgeous wine. In 2017, the Frog's Leap Cabernet has a bit more depth and richness, as it often does in warmer years. I don't know what they mean by that. Cedar, tobacco, mint, sweet cherry are all pushed forward in a succulent Cabernet with tons of character that still retains its super classic mid-weight feel. And time in the glass brings out the wine's aromatic nuance and silkiness.
And what kind of score do we get on that then?
We give this wine 100 points. Unfortunately, this guy only gave it 95.
Yeah, with all due respect to Mr. Galoni, 95 points is simply not enough for this wine.
Sure.
Really a question.
What do they know?
Yeah, question of judgment.
Delicious wine.
But
Delicious
I would agree with just a little extra sense of depth. I think the hot weather and
did we do something a little different varietal mix on this one?
Yeah, so the 2017, it's important to note, is about 83. We did misstate the percentages on the 2012 Cabernet.
Oh, we did?
We recall everything perfectly. That was about, the 2012 is about 92% Cabernet, whereas the 17 is only about 83% Cab, with an even split for the remaining percentage between Cabernet Franc and Merlot. So Merlot in the 2017, helping to really give the wine a little extra juiciness, a little extra, I think, friendliness to it, and helped add that kind of liveliness to the wine, which is a danger in very, very hot years, that you lose some of the freshness, that you lose some of the liveliness. But I think the combination of the Cab Franc and the Merlot and the dry farm vines, which really help dig deep to find that natural balance of acidity, which for us, I mean, I don't know about you, Deb, but this was my first lesson about sampling grapes. Was, we're not really looking at sugar, and you're not picking on numbers, but when you're putting that grape into your mouth, the thing you're tasting for is acidity, and that kind of freshness is what allows the wine to taste good now, gives it freshness when it's
I think young. I was kind of going, holy shit, we better get this in.
There's that too. Mr. Karnak?
No, that's the great Karnak. Don't pay any attention to that question. He's setting us up here. We're going to talk about the Rossi Vineyard in Karnak in a few minutes, about what it brings. Rory, I want to ask a question, because typically there's a little more greenness. I love this beautiful green black character paradigm in Cabernet Sauvignon. This wine is lacking a little of the green for me. I would want a little more greenness in this wine.
Well, that would make you about the only person in America.
I understand that.
My dad's referring to the green character that I think often can be misunderstood in Cabernet Sauvignon, where there's the thought that either it's a green flavor that the wine should taste like green bell peppers, which I don't agree with. Right. But there's an element of making, really, I think, and we talk about this with making any wine, is that there's always a little bit of if you're making it properly, you're living on the edge a little bit, where you are not just, it's really easy to make a wine taste like raisins, because all you have to do is just wait around for a long time until the grapes become raisins, and then you just make the wine. It's a lot harder to find that balance where you kind of you pack the wine with the most amount of diversity and the most amount of character as possible when it's young. And with Cabernet Sauvignon, that means not being afraid of the green a little bit. And I think that really what that shows up is not so much the bell pepper, which is not super attractive with a lot of wines, but the way that we ride that. We talked about the herbal floral, kind of herbal and floral complex with Cabernet Sauvignon. That's our version of riding the wave, of kind of walking that line between getting all that sweet fruit, all of the California sunshine that we enjoy here, really trying to put as much of that in the wine, while also expressing the wonderfulness of Cabernet, which is its capacity to develop over time and show different angles and show different personalities over time. And if you abandon the green, I think you're abandoning a little bit of that potential.
It loses tension in the wine too. It is that tension between the green and the black that makes Cabernet so very special. And that's what makes Rutherford so very, very special, because it is in this perfect place in the valley to balance the darker fruit of the north and the greener fruit to the south. And I just really think that's a huge part of Rutherford. And I believe it's that interplay that actually gives you this earthy, dusty smell that Mr. Chelchef called Rutherford dust that is so special in these wines.
Yeah.
And
I think that's right. And it's, it speaks to what's good, making good wine in a way. It's like, you got to be kind of, sometimes there's so much Cabernet in Napa that you got to feel like, oh, you got to be really bad at making wine to make bad Cabernet in Napa. And Napa is a pretty beautiful place to make wine. And it's very hard to make, to not get your grapes ripe in Napa. But that's not to say that it's easy to make Cabernet in Rutherford.
Well, and you may not agree with me on this, but honestly, I believe that approximately 30% of the Napa Valley is perfect for Cabernet Sauvignon, and yet is now 87% of the red grape planted in Napa is Cabernet Sauvignon. People are planting it all too often where it shouldn't be planted just because it makes more money, and that's wrong. So Cabernet is very particular to have what we call good but not too good growth, right? So devigorating soils, but warm soils. It is a variety that ripens later. It's the latest ripening variety of all of them. And so it really needs to have these gravelly alluvial soils. And if you've been to Bordeaux, this is exactly why the grape vineyards are great over there, is because of their gravelly type soils. And Cabernet demands that. And fortunate in Napa Valley that we're a system of alluvial fans, or gravelly deposits that come out of the hillsides, primarily on the west side of the valley, where two of these vineyards, the Lee Chavez and the Rossi vineyard, are. But we're on the concrete alluvial fan here, which is why we grow a little Cabernet here as well. So soil is so fundamental to making great Cabernet Sauvignon, and why it is great, and why it's a little more expensive. It can only be grown properly in a few places in the world, and to be this special, and to exhibit natural balance, natural restraint, and then a character of place that is, the joy of being able to tell mantras from Bechevel or Pauillac from, is one of the great joys.
Hey, you know French too. It's incredible. Yeah, we're learning new things.
I probably mispronounced it.
It is true, and it kind of speaks to maybe a question that that doesn't get asked often enough, but why Cabernet Sauvignon? Why this grape above all the other grapes? And there's some historical and cultural reasons for it, but if you get down to it, there's a farming reason for it, and it's that in the right spot, and as we said earlier, in the right spot with the right hands and the right kind of mentality around it, it is capable of the highest expression of terroir in Napa Valley, and that is it's not always achieved. It's not achieved in every soil, but it can be achieved, and when it does hit that, man, it's good. It can be really, really good. We got a question here from Darren and Peggy Bowden that's extremely easy to answer, actually. You both made Chenin Blanc before, Rory with Calder, with my own personal brand, and John with Frog's Leap. And the question is, who makes a better Chenin Blanc? And
aren't we tasting Chenin Blanc? Wait a second. Aren't we tasting Chenin Blanc in another session?
I think we're. It's an easy question to answer, but maybe we need to answer it live. Okay, all right.
Let's answer it live.
So
you got any Calder Chenin Blanc that you can put in?
I'm sorry, it's all sold out.
Oh, well, Jesus, here we go.
It's very exclusive,
Yeah. You make 3 cases.
Well, yeah. And,
well, look, we're moving along here. We want to taste this special wine with people, and it's a special wine for me, particularly. So can we pour this out? And you selected this, so this is your choice here.
So and I'm going to use a proper. We're going to use a bigger glass here. Keep the 17-year glass and just see. We talked a little bit about how the wine develops. So the next one we're going to pour, we didn't advertise that we were going to pour. So feel free to keep the 17 in your glass and just smell how this young wine.
As we go on and on and on about the next wine, you can just.
Puts me in mind of a tale, yeah. So the next wine we're going to pour is a pretty special one for us both, really. This is our 1996 Rutherford.
Are you going to fondle that or pour it?
Give me a second. Yeah, give us a moment. So let me pour this for you, Dad. And you can explain since you're hot to trot on this, why don't you explain what the Rutherford is?
Well, in 1996, we turned around and looked at ourselves, particularly Frank and I, and said, do you know how much Cabernet Sauvignon we are now growing here in the Napa Valley? We had just 2 years prior purchased the Red Barn and moved the winery here from the old Frog Farm. It had been a tumultuous time in all of our lives, bringing this winery to fruition. And we looked around and we had all these beautiful Cabernet grapes grown in Rutherford. We had beautiful people growing Cabernet for us as well. We were primarily a purchased winery up till that point, purchased grape winery. And I said, we need to make a special wine just out of the grapes we grow in Rutherford. And so starting in 1996, this wine is the first Rutherford, which was a separate bottling than from our Napa Cabernet Sauvignon. And it was to explore this idea of terroir in Rutherford. And this is a personal story for me because most of you guys know that I started my winemaking career here in Napa down at Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. And the consulting winemaker who was my mentor at the time was a guy named Andre Chelestev, who is probably, certainly one of the most famous names besides myself in the Napa Valley winemaking history. And Andre was a legend, of course. But Andre made the Cabernet Sauvignons at Villiers Vineyards from 1934 to 1968. And so he's the one who coined the term Rutherford dust, this idea that Cabernet Sauvignon grown in Rutherford could have such a distinctive character of place that it couldn't be reproduced anywhere else. And that's what drives us in our Cabernet Sauvignon mission now, is trying to achieve terroir or personality of Rutherford in our wines. And this was the first real attempt at that, and was a special wine. It was received enormously well, and put us in the position of acquiring the Rossi Ranch in 2007 and driving us towards, with Frank and Best grapes and Red Barn grapes here, to being all estate grown starting in 1996. This is what started it all, basically. Yeah. And you were 12 years old?
I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
I was still doing things like crashing your truck. And
yeah, that might have been the year.
So I was contributing in my own way towards this wine. Dad, this is a beautiful wine.
Yeah.
No, all jokes aside, this is a beautiful wine, and I think it's a great wine to kind of have in our glass, and hopefully we can take some questions. Hopefully we've got some. Hopefully somebody's actually watching this.
For only having 2 listeners out there, we're getting a lot of questions, so I'm very impressed. I hope you guys are enjoying yourself. We have no idea what we're doing here, but this has been a lot of fun. This continues to be fun. Yeah. And a little 96.
We were debating on calling it interactive tasting or day drinking with John and Rory. But we realized depending on where you are, you can be day drinking or evening drinking, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So let's jump into a few questions.
Yeah. So Dad, there's a question from Kevin Call here. How is the journey to becoming a winemaker different today than it was when you started?
Well, I think it's easier today, to be honest with you. Everything was harder back in my day. No, but you think about it, Rory, and this is actually a better question for you than it is for me, because I can't remember anything, but you've got a lot of young friends who are starting wineries now and who don't have a lot of money. They're starting with passion. Frog Leap started out of passion and no money, right? But if you're a passionate young person in wine today, is it possible to get started without a lot of money and make your way? Yeah. And I would argue that you've got several great examples, and mention them by name, if you will, of people who've done exactly that.
I think it is extremely different. The olden days, I'm called olden because everybody's aware of land prices in Napa, and that drives a lot of costs, a lot of expenses in Napa. And so the whole dream of coming here with on your motorcycle and selling your motorcycle and starting up on a little piece of land that you farm yourself and make your own Cabernet, that's not available these days for the most part. I wouldn't say that it's completely impossible, but it's hard. That's not widely available anymore. And you know, in terms of
In Napa.
And in other, you know, the same is largely true in other very mature winemaking regions. If you're in Pauillac, how easy it is to just
How easy to just go and buy a few hectares.
Yeah. Hey, Alberto Wine, you got any vines out of Romani Conti that you're willing to kind of sell on the side? I think it requires a different approach. And I think that there's one of the best things about Napa and one of the best things about wine country here in Northern California is that it just attracts people from all over the world, passionate people about wine, passionate people about winemaking, people who have they got the bug and they know that Napa is the place to go to make
it's
it
an
happen.
itch they can't scratch. They have to scratch.
Yeah. And I'll give a shout out to a few of my friends who have made it work. And the approach to it is being flexible and being open to opportunities when they arrive. So people like Hardy Wallace, who I'll give a shout out to, is doing it. I think he might have just finished his own interactive tasting with Dirty and Rowdy. If you guys don't know the wines, they're fabulous wines. Made mainly Mourvedres from all over California. They're just freaking awesome. I polished off a bottle of Shake Ridge Ranch Mourvedre last night. That was really good. So please seek out those wines too. But he's an example of a young winemaker with a young family. He's, you know, kind of like the way there's a common element to all of this, which is you got to go all in. And I think that's the commitment that is, I make a bunch of money, you know, selling off my insurance firm and I buy my 1 acre and charge $800 a bottle for my Cabernet. It's a world of Napa winemaking that it's not for me. I don't know that I even really consider it part of my sphere. Instead, it's people like Hardy who go all in on, makes a little bit of Napa wine, but he makes wine from all over the state, from Chalon, from northern Mendocino County.
Maybe we should do a tasting with some of your friends' wines and show them. I guess that doesn't make us any money.
Yeah.
Vote if you want us to do that.
Yeah,
I think it'd be good to do that.
Exactly.
We'll give them a shout out.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll tell you, this is going to be a rough time for a lot of these small producers and family wineries. So any support you guys can give to these wineries, and we will post a list of them if you guys are interested.
Hardy at Dirty and Rowdy, I'd say John Lockwood at Enfield Wine Company makes some fabulous Napa wines.
The Bedrock kids,
Bedrock, Morgan over at Bedrock. Those are the kinds of wineries. I mean, I'll put it this way: besides Frog's, those are the kind of wines that I drink. Which, if you are like me, you're into wine because it's delicious to drink. It's you know, the whole world of trophy bottles and stuff like that is just, it's not for me. And getting, you know, really getting going in the wine industry these days requires you to go all in. And, you know, we'll mention a few names. I mentioned John and Hardy, but seek out the people who are all in. And for that matter, buy Frogsley because we're all in.
We're all in, no doubt about it.
You know, people are asking how to buy the 1996. We'll work on that. I think we have, we're going to try and get one bottle listed on the website. The price will be the entire long-term debt of Frog's Leap Winery. Which
That's
is
an expensive bottle.
Yeah, it's an expensive bottle of wine, I got to tell you. But if you wouldn't mind bailing us out, that would be a great time right now. Yeah.
Well, look, if you're listening and you're not a Frog Fellow, you really need to become a Frog Fellow. It is absolutely essential for access to our older wine because that's what being a special supporter of the winery means. Not to make a pitch for our fellowship of the Frog, but this is a pitch to become a fellow. We need those that have, a shout out to all of our Frog Fellows out there. You guys support us, and particularly in these strange times. We're counting on you guys, and we love you, and that's why we give you access to our cellars. So
yeah, relevantly to the 1996, if you are a Frog Fellow member and you're tasting the 96 and you love it, reach out to somebody on the team. You know who they are, and we'll try and see what we can do to hook you up. There was a question earlier actually about how long to lay down our white wines, and if at all. And I think that's actually a nice segue to describe next week's tasting when we'll be attacking a couple bottles of Sauvignon Blanc, our 18 Sauvignon Blanc that everybody knows and loves, and actually an 18 what we call our Rachel Rossi Reserve, which is just 70 cases made of a single vineyard, single block of old vine Sauvignon Blanc that I believe is available now. I hope we're trying to sell it at least, you know, to be smart.
It just released
to try and sell
just
it.
released this week, so yeah, keep an eye out for that. It's a really, really special wine, and we have a couple surprises, maybe. Huh?
Yeah, we may have a couple surprises very relevant to the how long to lay down your white wines. Just got a note to, if you are interested in some of the older wines, the 96 Rutherford, including the 2007 Rutherford, or really any of the older wines, reach out to us. Ribbit at Frog. We have just the silliest frog jokes. I mean, the frog jokes are just eternal. Ribbit at frogsleep.com is our main email address. I think the 07 might actually be for sale on there right now. I think would you make too much 07 or something like that, you couldn't sell it?
What are you talking about?
But yeah, I think we love offering these older wines, and I think that's part of what we want to do. And let us know in the comments if you want us to taste some more older wines or offer some more older wines. We'll drink anything. You know, you tell us to go grab a barrel sample, we'll go drink that. We love drinking our own wine.
Hey, I like the suggestion that just came up that we suggest some hors d'oeuvres to go with these wines. And what the hell, don't we have any food here? You know,
I'd suggest a great hors d'oeuvre for this is a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Just to get you started, get you in there. So we'll go. Any plans to replace the basketball hoop in the barn?
Can I tell you about the fate of the basketball hoop and why? Many of you remember we had a basketball hoop in the Red Barn, and that basketball hoop was placed as it was because all my life I wanted to be able to jump up and reach the net, and I was never able to do that. So when we put the basketball hoop up, I put it at a height where I could reach the net. Well, it turns out that there were a lot of people who their whole life, all they wanted to do was dunk a basketball.
Yeah,
and
which turns out when you put a basketball hoop at only 8 feet above the ground, lots of people can dunk on an 8-foot hoop.
Well, unfortunately, what they kept doing was collapsing the basketball hoop on them. So we had 3 or 4 people hurt. So I'm not sure that we're going to have the basketball.
Are you telling me
we have to put it at 10 feet?
Are you telling me it was the lawyers who made us do it?
Yeah.
Mike O'Connor asking him, our opinion, what's the best wine Frog's Leap has ever produced, varietal and vintage? I have an easy answer to this question. I don't know that you have an easy answer to the question. But.
What do we have currently for sale?
My dad does joke that, or he told me a long time ago when I first started my own brand and started making wine, that as soon as the wine gets in the bottle, it's the best wine you've ever made.
And when it's for sale, it even gets better.
And I think there's certainly a cynical way of interpreting that, but I think I hope what he was getting at is that it's that kind of all-in feeling that we are behind every wine that we make and we sell, because we don't go out there buying wine from other people and trying to get it to you at the right, trying to get it to you at the price you'll pay and that kind of thing. We stand behind what we make, and I think that's especially relevant for the 17, where lots of questions about the year and what about the fires and all of that stuff. My only real way of answering that kind of question is just, I'll be drinking these wines for my entire life. And that means that when I come back to these wines, I want to remember, everything about those years, the bitter and the sweet. That means putting what you mean and putting what you believe in into the wine.
Drinking great wine is drinking great stories, and the story of that wine will be a memory, or it'll be something that happened that year, or it'll be something that makes you relate to that wine in a special year. So your favorite wine will not be my favorite wine, because there's no perfect wine. They're all just great stories. And so let's keep going with the great stories. That's what it's really about.
For me, you want an answer to that question, what's the best wine we've ever made? It's the 1999 Rutherford, and please don't interpret that as like, oh, well, it's no better than 96. It may well be that the 96 for you is a better wine. The 99 for me was the first wine that ever connected with me and made the wine taste like home to me. And that was a wine that I drank when I was out on my first ever internship in Italy. I brought the one bottle of Cabernet all the way to Italy, and I worked in Italy for about 4 months at that point. drinking essentially nonstop Barbera and Dolcetto and Nebbiolo. It was all I had to drink, and I had one bottle of California wine that I cracked open at the end of harvest with all the other people I was working with in Italy. And it was that experience of having the wine transport my brain 6,000 miles back home that was like, holy moly, that's what wine is for. That's, if you ask a simple question, why Cabernet Sauvignon, why wine? There's your answer, is that when it does that, that's why
it can transport you.
It can transport you. And when it's at its best, that's what wine can do. And that's when it has that power, man, that is, I would not trade that experience in my life for absolutely anything. It is a defining moment of my life. And that wine.
Pour yourself a little wine in.
Yeah, I will. Actually, I like you. Actually, you're making me drink.
Yeah, all right.
That experience for you, maybe coming to the winery and what you have at the winery, and maybe a bottle that you saved up that you had at a special moment in your life. And I think that's what wine is for. Wine's for drinking. Wine's for sharing with others, for shared experiences. And so, we do get questions about what glass is ideal for the wine and what food is perfect for the wine. That's malleable. It's very malleable. We've got these glasses up here. Generally, whatever glass feels comfortable in your hand that isn't a martini glass. But hey, if I would say that if you got the right wine in the right place, heck, you could drink it out of a mason jar and it could be the best wine you've ever had.
Hey, Bill Quain might still be online, and he may remember this, but we enjoyed a bottle of champagne, and we drank it out of coffee cups in the basement of the fraternity at Cornell, and that was the best glass that I ever used for drinking champagne, because I was with Bill, and it was with a special moment. So,
what vintage of Cooks was that?
Yeah, that was Andre.
It was Andre. Oh, I'm sorry. Very sorry.
But believe it or not, we've wasted a very full hour of your time here, and we understand if you all have things to do. There are some questions coming back in, and we're glad to sit here for a while. We're looking at our handlers here. Natalie, can we, first of all, a big shout out to you, because you pulled us all together and you've done great. As far as we know, we've actually been broadcasting this because people are getting back to us. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Jessica's here as our handler as well, getting the wines ready. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, they've taught us. This is an iPad, you say, Natalie, that we're looking at here. The incredible technology you all got these days.
So we're willing to sit here for a little bit longer and then talk if you guys are up for it, but we certainly understand, and we don't want to bore you any further, because we do want you to come back next week. This has been fun for us, and we're going to make next week. We'll get better at this as time goes along and have a little more fun, but it's been good.
Yeah.
How about that?
How about that?
I'm like online now.
Yeah, Dan.
Ooh. Does that make me a millennial?
I'm afraid not. But
Damn.
So, we gonna get a couple more questions, or cool? If we could drink only one bottle of Frog's Leap, what would it be and which year?
I just kill myself.
It's if we could drink only one bottle of Frog's Leap, I'd say I could probably get one of our big 18-liter bottles.
Yeah, it's the size matters.
Yeah, the size matters when you're talking one bottle. You got to define your terms here.
My friend Greg Vita, I have to tell this story because he got married. I introduced him to he and his wife Diana. They worked for me at Spring Mountain Vineyards, and they were getting married at the lodge at Pebble Beach, and they wanted to bring their own champagne in. And but the lodge at Pebble Beach says, no, we charge $800 corkage. If you bring in your own wine, you have to buy our wine. And it wasn't $800; it was like $60, right? And they said, so
you're good at exaggerating numbers.
Well, I'm not going
to. This wine is 800%.
Are you going to? Okay. So anyway, so they say you charge $60 corkage if we bring in a bottle of champagne. I said, yes, we do. And they brought in an 18-liter of champagne.
Always read the fine print, folks.
Yeah, that's right. The rules at the Lodge of Pebble Beach are changed now.
Brian Anderson was asking, since the tasting room isn't open, how do we find these library wines? Every time I visit, there's always more offered from the library than what is on the website. And, you know, Brian, there's a good reason for that. And it's that while we do hold back a lot of our library wines, we don't always have enough to offer all of them on the website. And really, this is something that we kind of just discovered in the last few years, really, that people are really interested in buying these older wines. And actually,
we're not that interested in them buying them, to be honest with you.
We do want to hold a few of these back so that we can drink them. Some of them are, you know, a lot of it is kind of us figuring out which wines to share. A lot of it are wines that we hold back for the fellowship and for our wine club, and we try to offer those wines to folks in our.
Look, we got to offer the wines to the people who support us the most, and those are our frog fellows. And so, yeah, sorry, that's the way it is.
No, but what we hope to do, you know, what we hope to get out of these tastings and hope to kind of expand a little bit more is being able to cherry pick a few vintages and share them with you guys live, and be able to do some more drinking with you, and be able to, you know, tell some more stories about, you know, how that wine came to be, and you know, there are crazy stories about 2017. There's a cool comment here from Daniel Hart. We had a little 2011 left over from last night's Super Burgers. What a difference! Lots of leather, tobacco, tannins, and pepper. That's 2011, I think, in a nutshell, where you got all of these tertiary aromas. And boy, what a 2011! Another difficult year for completely different reasons than in 2017. But one of those years where I'm not surprised that wine opened up on you overnight, and once it got a little bit more.
What are Super Burgers?
Those are burgers, but they're bigger.
Oh,
yeah,
that makes sense now that I think about it.
But it's.
Oh wait, I like this comment. Someone wrote in. Certainly not a waste of time. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence.
Well,
that's not what we expected.
Eric Hill asked, how big is John's personal cellar?
It used to be bigger until my kids found it.
It's, you know, it kind of, I'll put it this way. It extends a lot out of the fact that we drink the wines that we buy, and we buy them to drink. And our cellar is, you know, often a lot of our cellar is made up of wines that friends give us. And they're more, it's less of the whole.
It has a high turnover.
It has a high turnover rate. Lots of Beaujolais, lots of Syrahs, lots of Nebbiolo.
You always find the most expensive bottle every time I send you.
Well, you've always got some nice single vineyard Barolo stashed away that I can't resist.
I need a better one.
And I gotta help you find the occasion, basically.
The only one worse you is Kyler. Man, Nick, I could find a good bottle every time. Yeah.
Well, Dad, I think this has been a pretty cool tasting, and we want to really encourage you all. Thank you all. First off, thank you guys for joining us.
We didn't rate the last wine. The 96 Cabernet. Are you ready?
Wait,
one second. How many times do you get a chance to try 100 point wines in a single tasting?
Yeah, it's incredible. What a special opportunity.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for whatever patience you've had to have dealing with us on here. We really want to join you guys next week and for tasting some Sauvignon Blanc. I mentioned the 18 Sauvignon Blanc, the 18 Rachel Rossi, which is made from vines that were planted in the same year that we founded the winery, and some really, really special.
And 3 years before you were born.
Yeah, exactly. Ancient vines, in other words. And we'll be tasting a special wine with that as well that has a ton of meaning for us personally and us as a winery. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed the wine, and buy Frog Sleep Wine, frogsleep.com. And cheers to you all. Cheers to what is undoubtedly a difficult time for everybody around the country. We are really happy that you chose to spend this time with us, and we hope you keep drinking the wine, because we're going to keep making it.
Yeah.
And, so cheers to you, and cheers to everyone, all your loved ones and all your family.
Take care, you guys.